chapter 3, Mishnah Dalet. Interesting concept today. You're going to like it. So we're still talking about if you're allowed to warm things up on Shabbat, you're not allowed to warm things up on Shabbat, how you are allowed, how you're not allowed. That's the main topic that we're going to be discussing today. And we're going to see about a trick that the people of Israel did in the old times. So let's see. Maaseh, there was a coincidence, שעשו אנשי טבריה, that the people of Tveria did. והביאו סילון של צונן. They took a pipe of cold water. לתוך אמה של חמין. And they put it inside a channel of hot water. So if you familiar with Israel, in Tveria, there's a place called Chamei Tveria. It's a place that's got hot springs over there. So they were smart. So they said, oh, we can use this hot spring to warm things up on Shabbos. So what did they do? They took a long pipe of cold water from one of the other springs that they had over there. They made it go through the Chamei Tveria, through the hot springs, so that it will warm up. And that, they continued into the city. So now they had hot water, also when? Also on Shabbat. Yes. So this is the case. So we already discussed a couple of things. It says, are you allowed to use things that will heat by other things or not? So over here, it looks like natural. You're not heating it, you're not cooking it. I mean, you are heating it, but it's natural. It's not called cooking. So let's see if the sages are going to allow them to use it on Shabbat. לתוך אמה של חמים, לתוך תעלת המים החמים, inside a channel of hot water, the hot springs, כדי שהמים הצוננים העוברים בצינור, they did it so that the cold water that passes in the pipe, יתחממו, they become warm. מחמת המים החמים שבתעלה, the hot springs will warm up the cold water that's in the pipes. It's an ingenious idea. Like this, you can have hot water. It's almost like modern living. In the old times, there was never such a thing. Think about it. It's a genius idea. Amru lahem chachamim, the sages though told them, guys, nice job. Maybe you can use it in the middle of the week. We're going to have problems with us. We need to understand what's the problems. Amru lahem chachamim, the sages says to whom? To Anshei Tveria, to the people of Tveria. Im beshabbat, it says, if you are about to use this, and this is Shabbat, klomar, which means, hamayim atzonenim העוברים בצינור, that the cold water that passed in this pipe, ומתחממים בתעלה בשבת, they become hot in the channel, in the hot springs on Shabbat itself, אף על פי שנכנסו לצינור מערב שבת, even though they came into the pipe from Friday night, it says, we're going to consider it like what? We know it's not true, but we're going to consider it for you guys like kechamin sheochmu b'Shabbat. It is just like you warmed up this water on Shabbat itself. Even though you didn't warm up the shoulder, you set it up before Shabbat. The whole system was set up before Shabbat. You didn't touch the system once Shabbat came in. We're going to consider it as if you put fire under it and you heat it up. And if you did that, then what's the ruling? Dinam kedin maim sheochmu b'Shabbat. We're going to consider it just like water that was warmed up on Shabbat. Velachen, and therefore, there's going to be two rules over here. Asurim berechitza, you will not be allowed to use this water for washing. Afilu, now washing on Shabbat for sure you're not allowed to use. Yeah, but over here it doesn't even mean washing yourself, the entire body. It means just washing your face or washing your hands with hot water. You're not allowed to. Asurim berechitza, they are forbidden in washing. Afilu panav yadav vereglav, even not the whole body, just a little bit. מה שאין כן במים שהוחמו מערב שבת, it is not so with water that a person warmed up from before Shabbat. and those water are still warm, you're allowed to use it for washing your hands, feet, and face. שמותר לרחוץ בהם בשבת, פניו, ידיו וברגליו. So you're not allowed to use them at all. Not for washing even a little bit. We're not talking about the whole body. Even just your hands are allowed to wash. And ובשתייה. And we're not going to allow you even to drink it. Of course, if you're not allowed to wash, how much more for drinking? וכן אסורים בשתייה. So it says, so in other words, it's not going to help you. It's going to help you for the rest of the week to have hot water, but it's not going to help you for Shabbat. On Shabbat, you're not going to be allowed to use this water. B'Yom Tov, what about on a Yom Tov? On Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, המים העוברים בצינור ביום טוב, but the water that pass in this pipe on a Yom Tov, כחמין שהוחמו ביום טוב. We're going to consider it like hot water that somebody warmed up on Yom Tov. And for that, what's the ruling? ולכן אסורים ברחיצה. Again, it is forbidden to wash your entire body on Yom Tov, but you are allowed to wash maybe your face, we'll see. ומותרים בשתייה. And they are permitted in drinking because you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. You're allowed to heat up water on Yom Tov. So therefore you're allowed to use those hot water in Yom Tov. שהרי כל צורך אוכל נפש מותר ביום טוב. Because when it comes to Yom Tov, any cooked food that you eat is allowed. וכן, and also, מותר לרחוץ בהם פניו, ידיו ורגליו. You're also allowed to wash, not your entire body obviously, because that you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov, but you're allowed to wash face, feet, and legs. בגמרא מבואר, in the Gemara it explains, שלפי הטעם שאמרו בסייפה, according to the reason they said in the end of the Mishnah, of which Mishnah? של המשנה הקודמת, of the Mishnah, the previous Mishnah that we learned last time on Monday, במה ששנינו ולא יטמיננה בחול, it says that even though you're allowed to cook, to put an egg on Shabbat in the sun, and the eggs gets cooked, you're allowed to do that. It says you're still not allowed to put the egg in the sand on Shabbat. Because it says, Toldat Chama, an offspring of something that was heated from the sun, the sages disallowed it. Remember we discussed it on Monday? The sages disallowed it, and there was a reason. It looks like coals, it looks like other stuff. For Marit Ayin, they disallowed it. Gzera, it says this is the decree. Shema yatmin beremetz. Maybe you're going to put hot something inside coals. Ba ma'aseh hazeh shel anshei Tveria. This came the things of the people of Tveria. להוכיח, to prove, שבדרך הטמנה אסור, that in a way of putting it into something else, it is forbidden. אבל לפי הטעם השני, but according to the second reasons, שרבי יוסי מודה שלא יטמנה בחול, Rabbi Yossi, in the previous Mishnah, also agrees that you're not allowed to put it in the sand. You remember? He says, I agree with you, you're not allowed to put it in the sand because they took the coals. Shema Yazir Zafar, and because it says also you might dig in it, and then it's going to be a tolda of zorea, a tolda of seeding. So Musav Maaseh Zeh al Reisha. So according to him, it goes on the beginning of the Mishnah. Shechachamim ba'im leochiach mekan. The sages come to prove from him. LeRabbi Yossi, according to Rabbi Yossi, shetoldat hashemesh asura. That even Yossi admits that an offspring of the sun is forbidden. Beram, Rabbi Yossi sover, Rabbi Yossi holds, shechamei tvera einam toldot shemesh. He says, no. The reason why this water is hot has nothing to do with the sun. It's an elatoldat esh. It's an offspring of fire. So the Chachamim going to ask Rabbi Yossi, where do you see a fire over here? Where's the fire? Shovrim. So he explains to you. I'll tell you where the fire is. שחמי טבריה אינם תולדות שמש אלא תולדות אש. They come from fire. שעוברים הם על פתחו של גיהינום. Because those water gets warmed up when they go by the opening of hell. It says they go down into the deep earth over there. It's the opening of hell over there. And that's where they get warmed up. It gets warmed up over there. Let's do the next one.
So,
Yeah, question?
yeah, this is reminds me of the similarity of how in our modern times would be like using a water heater. It's already on, it's already hot. You didn't turn it on, but when you turn the faucet, it brings new cold water in.
Different.
It's a different issue.
Yeah, because when you turn the cold water on, you're doing something to the system. You're actively participating in the system. Over there, there's absolutely no active participation. It goes on completely. It's nothing to do with you. So when you're opening cold water or hot water, you're taking hot water out, cold water comes in, and now the thing comes alive, the system comes alive. The fire is because of you. It goes on because of you. Over there, it's not. It's continuously going. It has nothing to do with you. You did not participate in the system at all. So it's not the same case at all. Over there, it's much more lenient. In actuality, you should be able to use it.
Yeah, because it's just running all the time.
It's just running all the time, that's right. It's got nothing to do with you. You're not participating in any way in the system. Whether you use this water, whether you don't use the water, it's exactly the same temperature at all times, at all things. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. You're not participating in the system. The way you described it, you have a participation in the system, it's much more strict. Over here, the only reason it looks like Rabbi Yossi doesn't allow it, because it doesn't want you to use the power of Gehenna, the power of hell. In other words, Shabbat, you might be fine. You're not really doing any cooking on Shabbat, but it's not nice to use the so-called power of hell to warm up things on Shabbat. So let's continue. The next concept we're going to talk about, again, is about heating stuff on Shabbat. It's called muliyar. Now, muliyar hagaruf. What's muliyar? You would know what it is. It's like samovar. It's very close to samovar. So muliyar hagaruf, muliyar that you emptied it out of the coals. Otherwise, there's no more coals in it. So why do we say you emptied it out from the coals? Because if you have let's explain what's a muliyar first. It's an iron pot that has partition inside. There's a partition, and in one side of the iron pot you will put coals, and the other side you put hot water. And in the old time they would use it as a heating source for Shabbat. The problem is that the coals are cooking the water during Shabbat. So you've got hot water being made on Shabbat. So that obviously you're not allowed to have it. But over here, what you did is you took out all the coals before Shabbat. So in other words, there's no coals in this muliyar, in this samovar, before Shabbat. So now let's see what the problem is. Muliyar agaruf. So you have muliyar that you took out all the coals out of it. Muliyar u kli cheres. A muliyar, it's a vessel of clay, or shel nechoshet, or of copper, lechimu mayim, to warm up water. Umevuar bagmara, and the Gemara explained the way it used to be made. Mayim mibifnim, it's not exactly like I said. It's a little bit different. There's water on the inside, vegechalin mibachutz, and the coals were outside. So it looks like it was wide, and you put the coals all around and the water was inside.
So insulated.
Like almost like an insulation, that's right. And you will put the coal in the outside part and the water in the inside part. כלומר, שיש לו בית קיבול גדול למים, he has an area where you receive the water, ובצידו בית קיפול קטן לגחלים, and inside a small place for the coals. ויש גורסים להפך, there are those who say it's exactly the opposite. You put the coals in the inside and the water on the outside. It doesn't matter, whichever way you want to do it. Yeah? מים בחוץ וגחלים בפנים. כלומר, שבאמצעו יש בית קיבול לגחלים, according to the other opinion, in the middle was the coals, ומסביבו בית קיבול למים. And in the outside, just like a place for water. כאין הסמובר הרוסי. The samovar הרוסי, the coals are going in the middle?
In the middle.
Yeah, so So either the coals go in the middle or the coals go on the outside, but it doesn't matter. ובא המשנה ללמד, the Mishnah comes to teach us, שאם הוא גרוף מבעוד יום, as long as you take all the coals still on Friday, so as if you took all the coals out on Friday, then you're allowed to use it. שותים הימנו בשבת, you're allowed to use it on Shabbat. מותר לשתות בשבת, מן המים שחיממו בערב שבת. You're allowed to use this water, because those water were heated up when? Before Shabbat. לפי שאינו אלא משמר את החום של המים שלא יצטננו. Because all it does is keep the heat. In other words, it does not increase the heat of the food. It will not increase the heat. It will just keep the heat, sustain it. It's just like putting it in a thermos. אבל antichi. But now, when you've got an antichi is a different thing. What's an antichi? Antichi is kli shel nechoshet. It's a vessel of copper. Nechoshet is copper? Okay. Copper. שבקרקעיתו בית קיבול לגחלים. That where do the coals go? The coals go underneath. ועל גביו בית קיבול למים. On top, it has the water part. אף על פי שגופה, it says, even if you take all the coals out of it, שגרפו ממנה את הגחלים לפני שבת, אין שותים ממנה. You're not allowed to drink from it. And the question is why? Anybody wants to take a shot?
Still warming because it's not on top.
Oh,
but
it says...
The coals, that's like the stove or the oven.
Even though you took the coals out, you say, why are you not allowed to? So it says because the coals warmed up the base of the vessel to such an extent now that if you put water inside in 80 degrees, let's say, or 90 degrees, it's going to elevate the temperature to 95. In the previous example that we said, all is going to stay in the temperature is just going to remain in the same temperature, but it doesn't have the power to heat it up. Over here it is made in such a manner that the heating element becomes so hot, that it is able to increase the temperature of the liquid you put inside.
So if the liquid, you can't put liquid in, but if there's already liquid that's already heated, you still can't use it?
Because it's going to increase the temperature of that liquid.
The water is sitting and the coals on top. The water does not touch the coals on the top. The second, water and coals, the water is on the bottom also.
Yeah, it's almost like, I'll give you an example, right? Let's take an example. I put a piece of metal on the fire, it becomes very hot, then I remove it on Shabbat from the fire, right? And then I want to put something on it. Will I be allowed to?
No.
Why not?
Because that metal is going to cook, heat whatever you put on it.
Oh, now let's take another example. I took a piece of soup from the fire, and I'm going to put it into a thermos. And the thermos is going to continue to keep the temperature. Will I be allowed to do that?
Not on Shabbat.
Yes, you are.
On Shabbat.
On Shabbat.
Oh.
So that's the two cases.
Because it's going to stay. It's not.
It's not elevating the temperature.
Okay.
So over here, these are the two cases. We have a case where it just keeps the temperature. It doesn't elevate the temperature. But over here, the heating source is still there. It still will heat it up. So in the samovar part, it doesn't have enough heat. In the beginning part, it doesn't have enough heat to actually elevate the temperature. All that the heat that is there is only enough to keep the temperature that there is. In the second part, it is so hot that it will elevate the temperature of the liquid before. And that's why it's not allowed, even though you took the coals out. Because the heat, like we said, the heating element is so hot, it will completely raise the temperature of the liquid inside. לפי שהיא מחממת, because it is going to continue give heat, אף לאחר שנגרפה, even after you take the coals out. ונמצא שהמים מתחממים בשבת. Over here it's not just retaining the temperature of the water, it's actually elevating the temperature of the water. So again, there might be some samovars who do the same thing, and then the sages will tell you, you're allowed to do them. But the idea here, if it just retains the heat, you're allowed to do it. If it elevates the heat, you're not allowed to do it.